Welcome to Walpole 5-0. I'm Chief John Carmichael. Today is January 9th, 2018. Not 17, I got it. And before we get into the log this week, a few things to mention. Positive tickets and also Community Hero Award over the past couple of days. We recognize Ryan Jackson from Old Post Road School and Ethan Tosick from Bird Middle School. Both of these young men caught in the act of shoveling out fire hydrants on their snow day last Friday when school was out. And we thought that was a great thing that they did. The kids were out there. I know Ryan hit probably 5 or 6 different hydrants. You know, something that he did on his own, and we really appreciate that. We felt that it rose to the level of a community hero based on those actions, and also gave them a positive ticket for movie passes at Showcase Cinemas. So well-deserved, guys, and thank you very much for that. On the storm, by speaking of that, I want to thank all of the other departments, town administration, as well as the DPW, the fire department. They did a great job of keeping up with this storm. This thing came in pretty hard and fast, and you know, having school out Thursday and Friday, it did help us be able to deal with all of the issues we dealt with out there. A lot of cars off the road, a lot of vehicles broken down. We had MBTA buses stuck that couldn't get going, and some of them got backed up as far as commuters trying to get into Boston. So it was a pretty significant storm, and all of the departments did very well, good teamwork in mitigating all the issues that came along with it. STUPAC, Student Police Advisory Council, that's our high school kids that we partner up with. This will be our 3rd year that we're offered STUPAC. We're going to be meeting this week, so I know we've reached out to all of the members of STUPAC, which is about 15 teenagers all the way from freshman to senior in high school, and we're going to meet with all of the kids this week and go over some of the issues that impact them. Since I'm on the Cannabis Advisory Board for the state of Massachusetts, there's some issues that came up with the marijuana legalization this week. There's a new U.S. Attorney, Andrew Lelling, under the oversight of Attorney General Sessions, has come out basically, and it's not a surprise, but have come out and basically said that, or reminded us that marijuana is a Schedule I drug, that Congress has declared that marijuana is a Schedule I drug. It's been supported in some of the past case law. Gonzalez versus Reich was one of the most recent ones, and that also declared again that you can't cultivate marijuana. And as a result of this, there's a lot of questions as to what's going to happen. But essentially, the U.S. Attorney for Boston, Massachusetts is saying that they're going to deal with marijuana crime on a case-by-case basis, but also that no particular entity has immunity. So this is really huge. It's kind of thrown a wrench in the industry, if you will. One of the things we have to understand is states' rights. I know that a lot of people feel that states have the right to do what they want. Previously to this, there was what was called the Ogden and the Cole memo. And those memos were passed down by AGs that had enforcement priorities, and those enforcement priorities, unfortunately, under the past administrations, weren't met. Diversion to other states, diversion to youth, criminal enterprises flourishing, drugged driving, all of the things that were mentioned in those memos were really kind of ignored. And so now where we are, what happened is some of the legal states back then were able to divert vast amounts of marijuana to other states that otherwise didn't want it, and they didn't support legalization. So we get the states' rights thing, but the problem is that it wasn't enforced enough, and it had an impact on other states that didn't want it, particularly states like Nebraska that ended up suing Colorado because of all of the marijuana that was coming out there. So you know, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know where this is going to go from here, but in any event, our U.S. attorneys made it pretty clear that again, that marijuana is a Schedule I drug and that they will enforce marijuana crime. So we'll see what happens. So getting into the log, January 2nd, there was a disturbance. This happened at 7-Eleven Walpole Center. There was an individual and the clerk got into an argument over a situation that happened in there. Officers were able to respond and restore peace. Summons, Officer Crown Henneberry conducted a motor vehicle stop and they ended up doing a summons for unlicensed operation. And the trend continues with unlicensed operation. I don't know what it's been over the past few weeks, but there's been a lot of those, people being stopped and they have no driver's license. Trespass. Officer Moriarty conducted an investigation at the Norfolk County Agricultural School for an unwanted person. The staff did not want this person on their property. They were having unleashed dogs run around, and as a result, they are seeking a letter of disinvite, which is a trespass notice, and Officer Moriarty assisted them with that process. A crash. There was a motor vehicle into a home. This happened on Hitching Post Drive. There was, we got a report there was a vehicle into the house. There was no injuries, however. It was a 17-year-old young man driving. He went off the roadway and struck the house. This is because it did hit a home under investigation by reconstructionist Officer Steve Foley, who was going to conduct the crash recon on that. Mostly disturbed person. This was resulted in an assault and battery that took place, as well as malicious destruction after that assault took place. The individual was summoned in for assault and battery, and that was conducted by Officer Dolan. On January 3rd, there was a larceny. We've had a couple of these in the past week. This one was on Washington Street and towards East Walpole. There was a report of a snowblower that was taken from a backyard. Officer Giblin handled this case, and then within 24 hours of that, Officer Moriarty conducted an investigation on Union Street in East Walpole for a forced B&E into a shed. They got into that shed. They stole a second snowblower, and some tools were stolen. Obviously very similar to the other case that happened prior. Detectives and Officer Moriarty is still conducting that investigation. A larceny. Officer Moriarty responded to Old Navy for a larceny report, larceny of clothing, and that is under investigation. A disturbance. A individual from Sector 3, which is West Walpole, wanted to speak to an officer about their husband. There was just some issues and basically looking for some assistance with the police, and they were able to go down and restore peace between the two individuals. A civil complaint. This was officer's person, victim regarding a possible 209A violation. We get these a lot because we do get a lot of restraining orders, domestic issues, and this was more of a question about the order, people not making sure they did, being proactive, making sure they didn't want to violate the order, and Officer Haber assisted with that. It turns out that there was no issue, so it turned out good. A disturbance, report of yelling and screaming. Caller reports people yelling and screaming loudly. Officer Doherty and Haber checked it out. They were just having a very loud conversation, and peace was restored there. On January 4th, unlicensed operation. Detective Songen, there was an individual, this was reported to us at the high school on previous occasions, a student driving without a license, and that is an issue that we're going to give to the school resource officers to address with that individual. Disturbance, units went to Main Street. Residents of two people arguing. When they got there, they determined that there was two individuals. They were having a verbal argument. Nothing became physical, and again, restored peace. So the officer's doing a good job on restoring the peace, keeping the peace, which I mention a lot because it's a lot of what we do. We have to, we're the people that can step in and mitigate situations and help people restore that peace and see eye to eye. Overdose. Officer Perchicante responded to the Walpole Mall for an unresponsive male. The Bobcat, this is an individual, some people noticed that the Bobcat that was plowing snow up there was stopped. It's for quite some time. The bucket was up and filled with snow. And when the officers approached, they had to be very careful because what can happen is if they stop using the hydraulics on the bucket, it can come crashing down and cause some problems, obviously, for first responders. In any event, this turns out that it was a non-fatal overdose, which is good. It's our first overdose of the year. Following, I think we had 33 overdoses last year in 2017, and I think we had 5 fatals, so I'd have to go back and look, but that's right about where we were for last year. This is our first one of this year. As a result of the ongoing investigation, there was a significant amount of drugs that were found in a backpack that were with that victim, including cocaine and heroin. So this situation will still be, there'll be charges pending as well for this. Emotionally disturbed person. Officer Dolan and Henneberry went to Sector 3. There was somebody with suicidal ideation. The officers were able to speak with that person, work out with family members, and able to deal with everything there. And as I've mentioned many times before, emotionally disturbed person calls. Our suicidal ideation, suicide attempt, Section 12s, which are involuntary commitment, Section 35, substance abuse commitments, have increased last year about 100% compared to 2016. So still a very significant issue we deal with, one that we're very prepared to deal with, I think, with our community crisis intervention team. Crash, Officer Slavin, single motor vehicle crash into a snowbank. Threw that one in there, but we went to many of those over the course of the storm. A gas leak in a crash. Patrolman Gibbon, he responded to North Walpole for an odor of gas. It turns out that one of the plow drivers, while they were plowing one of the homes, struck an exterior gas pipe, and that caused the gas line to break and obviously release gas, and the Columbia Gas went out and to shut that off and to repair it. January 5th, several motor vehicle crashes. Again, roads iced over. Again, DPW out there working very hard to stay up with the storm and with the overflow of ice that came with it, and dealt with several motor vehicle crashes on that day. January 6th, there was a disturbance. A person said they were threatened while at a drinking establishment in Walpole. There was a victim from Norwich said they were threatened by ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend. However, when we got there and we tried to get a report, the victim became uncooperative, didn't want to share some of the information, and as a result, we did a police report, but that no action was taken. Emotionally disturbed person, again, another report of suicidal ideation. Officers did a great job, and particularly Dispatcher Abady and Dispatcher Barnett, who were able to work from within the police station in the dispatch area and help out locate that individual. They were found down the Cape, and the PD down the Cape was able to help that person to get sectioned. Disturbance, this was on Washington Street. Two individuals, again, reached out to us looking for mediation between an argument, and the officers were able to go down there, sit down with both sides, and kind of hash some things out. Disturbance, that was the same call. Ambulance, it was a request for an unconscious person at St. Mary's Church. Officer Doherty was down there. He was able to go inside and help out with a female that was transported to the hospital from Mass. And by the way, since I'm mentioning Mass, I want to be a good time to wish Father Chip the best. Father Chip Hines, he's had an illness lately, and he's been in the hospital, and we wish Father Chip the best and a quick return and a quick recovery. All right. Arrest shoplifter at Walmart. Officer Doherty, Foley went under arrest for larceny over, and part of why they wanted to arrest this person was because of the price. They were well over the $250 limit, which makes that a felony, and also that they had a child that they were kind of using with them at the time they committed this larceny, and as a result, we have to notify the Department of Children and Families, DCF, as well as summoning them for contributing to the delinquency, for helping them, for having them be involved with something like that. Report of an erratic operator pulled into Cumberland Farms on Main Street. Officer Perchicante located them. They turned out fine. January 7th, suspicious person walked into the Fairfield Inn and then kind of poked around in and around the lobby there for a while. It grabbed the attention of some of the employees, and then that person left on foot, unknown direction of travel. Some of the circumstances led the officers to continue looking. Officer Murphy, Perchicante, and Sergeant McDonough checked the area. Turns out the family ended up finding the individual down near Union Street, which was quite a distance away from the hotel, but they made it that far on foot and were able to reunite this person with their friends. Disturbance, report of a disturbance going on at 7-Eleven. The units arrived, one party had left. It turns out the clerk was one of the people involved in it, and it turns out that it was an argument going back and forth over the winnings of a scratch ticket. But in any event, they resolved it between them before we got there. A couple of missing persons. These were teenagers. Got a report that there was 2 individuals that were missing. Officer Bethany checked the area, and one of the 14-year-olds had kind of snuck out of the house the night before, thought that they may be in Milton. They did work on this all night long to try and find these young girls, and that will continue to be an issue. The school resource officers were notified, and they were brought in to assist with this particular situation, so they'll be working on that. On January 8th, there was a robbery. This was an unarmed robbery. Came in, 911 call reporting a robbery at Dunkin' Donuts on Route 1 and Union Street. There was a black male that walked in, and they essentially what this person did was they purchased a coffee. They used cash to purchase the coffee, and when the clerk went to open the register, the individual lunged over the counter, physically grabbed the clerk, and physically removed the currency from the register. During that time, and this is quite a feat here, but the manager ended up striking the suspect in the head with a blunt object, and as a result, the individual was still able to get some of the money, but then ran off on foot. Witnesses did see this person get into a U-Haul truck and then go onto Route 1 southbound. Since this incident happened, we've arrested the suspect. His name's James Brown from Dorchester, Mass. And the reason why he was arrested was because he chose to rob another Dunkin' Donuts this morning in Mattapan. Boston police were right on it. There was a vehicle pursuit that led to a foot chase, and Boston PD ended up arresting the individual. It turns out that as this investigation kind of unfolded, we had been working with Boston PD the night before because we did develop him as a suspect. So we kind of had an idea that it was him. But now we've learned that he's committed about 9 robberies, all of Dunkin' Donuts, over the past few weeks along in Boston and the South Shore. I'll show you a quick picture. This was the bulletin that detectives generated and sent out, and the individual that has since been arrested for that robbery. And I really do appreciate the officers' quick response to this, and then all of them, our detectives, are working very hard to come up with a suspect and then work with Boston PD. And unfortunately for this guy, we didn't have to go looking for him. He ended up committing another crime where he was arrested. So that's that. Arrests. Officer Kevlich and other officers responded to Coles for 2 female shoplifters. One was extremely uncooperative. They stole over $1,400 worth of merchandise, obviously well over the $250 felony limit. They were processed and transported to court. Drugs recovered. School resource officer Hart responded to a school, and they found some drugs that were located on campus, and he seized those drugs and brought them back to the police station. Sexual assault. There was a sexual assault reported on January 8th. This was reported to Walpole PD and then referred to the detectives, and we do have sexual assault investigators in the district attorney's office. And so that's it for today, Walpole 5-0, January 9th, 2018, and I thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time. Thank you.